In this episode of Village Talk, we're helping parents discuss how to deal with your teen's negative self talk. Welcome to Empowered Kids TV Village Talk. You're here because you know every family has the potential to be great, and you're willing to push the boundaries of your mindset so that you can create the family of your dreams. Tonight, we have an amazing coach joining us. Sarah Parks is a mother, workshop facilitator, and an accredited legacy coach. She specializes in helping parents create more balance and harmony in their lives. Sarah is passionate about helping parents learn to communicate more effectively with their kids so that they're open to listening and to sharing throughout their childhood. She helps parents create family and financial freedom. And you can find out more about Sarah at spcoaching.co.uk. Sarah, welcome to Empowered Kids TV.
Hello, it's great to be here.
It's great to be here. We've got a question from Grace tonight, and I think this is one, especially throughout the pandemic, where mental health issue is really becoming something that parents have to be very vigilant of and focused on for their kids. It might be one that it's affecting a lot of families. So Grace writes, how do you handle negative self-talk from your teen or tween? I have a 12-year-old son who has taken to saying things about himself when he gets upset or in trouble, such as how he's the biggest dummy in the world or the worst kid in the world, how he doesn't know how to do anything right, etc. After we had a rough day with some bad behavior the other day, he tearfully told me that he doesn't feel like he's the right fit for this world and everyone hates him. I say these things to him, and I always tell him the opposite of what he's saying and try to reassure him that it isn't true. Sometimes I feel like it's just a little bit of a pity thing, so I will feel bad and let him off of punishment for whatever it is. But I don't want this to be something deeper either. Can you help?
Oh, yeah. So first of all, I'm sure lots of people will be able to relate to this and to, our children, beating up on themselves, actually, and it's as a parent to hear that, it's really sad. We want our children to be happy. We want our children to know how amazing they are and see themselves the way that we see them, and so it's heartbreaking when this happens. And the first thing that I will mention in what I heard in what Grace has said there is that she listened to him, and that is massive, and that is huge, and that is the starting point for everything. So with the skills that I share with parents and the way that I support parents, that is always the starting point. And knowing that for your son, knowing that his mom understands, knowing that she cares and is listening is huge. So first of all, I just want to congratulate you on listening to him. That's the first point. Those really are the foundations, those acknowledging our children's feelings. And it's not just any kind of listening, it's active listening that makes a massive difference. So when we are able to bring our presence to a situation, not try and fix it, not try and change it, and we don't even need to say anything initially. We don't even need to say, I understand how you're feeling, because actually when we say, I understand how you're feeling, the other person will think, well, no, you don't, because you're not me. And, immediately, and particularly if they're a teen, right?
No, you don't.
Well, you don't. How can you understand how I'm feeling? You weren't there, or you don't know, or you're not me, or, And I think, so that's one of the mistakes that sometimes we can make and not realize it, is say, I understand how you're feeling. Because we want to help, because we want to make it better. But actually, this is one of the things, is that less is more. When we bring our presence to the situation and we just listen and don't add anything, but it's that active listening, that quality of active listening, of letting go of, thinking about what I'm going to cook for dinner, or, what went on 10 minutes ago, or that thing I must remember to do later, or, it's that thing of being present, just being there. And the thing is, we can't do that all the time, right? We can't be 100% present with our children all the time. But the great news is we don't have to be. We just have to do it at the times when it's needed, right? So it is about, and if our child is saying, oh, like this son was saying, that, he doesn't feel like, he feels like he's dumb, feels like he doesn't fit in this world, that, that is a time when we need to zip it. And if you're anything like me, I can talk for England or Scotland or any country. So we just need to zip it and be there and recognize, oh, this is a moment when I do need to be here. This is a moment when I do need to be present. This is a moment when my child needs me. So, yeah. So that is the first bit, really. Yeah. Yeah.
I think there is so much value in recognizing that we don't always have to jump in to fix things right away. Sometimes our kids just need that safe space where they could pour out, and somebody's willing just to hold the space and listen.
Yeah.
And I think, because especially this one, it, as a mom, it kind of stings on the inside.
Oh, yeah.
To hear your child say something like that, and so you want to kind of erase it very quickly. But I think for me, what I've learned along the way is that in the moments where I'm rushing in to fix it, it has less to do with my kids and more to do with the fact that it made me feel uncomfortable. So I'm learning over time to sit with that myself.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true, isn't it? It's like you say, it's often more to do with our discomfort and our need to feel like we're doing something, our need to be seen to be doing something, like even if nobody's there. Like, sometimes we can have that voice come in of, what would the neighbors think, or what would my mother-in-law think, or that those things can influence us. And our need to feel like we're being a good mom, or we're being a good dad, or we're being a good parent, when actually it's important to keep that in check, really. And yeah, that less is more, and to really listen, and I mean, I use the how to talk so kids will listen, and listen so kids will talk skills a lot, and other skills and coaching skills and love languages and lots of different skills in the work that I do, that I have gathered and gleaned over years and years. And I've come across, so many, there's a lot of parenting stuff around. And it's so interesting because a lot of it you can track back to that book, for instance. It's one of the first ones that were written, that are really about respectful parenting. And, parenting from that kind of approach where you are viewing your child as a fellow human being, with equal rights. Yes, we need to guide them. Yes, we need to have firm, loving boundaries, but it's not about us dominating them, and it's not about us, dominating them. So the other thing about this question that I thought about as well, so that's the first part, is acknowledging their feelings, listening to them. And you can take that a step further, right? And you could, your next kind of part, there are a few things you can do to build on top of that listening, that active listening. So it starts with zipping it and doing nothing. And then on top, once, they've felt heard, you can add in maybe reflecting back what they've said. Now, And this is really easy to do because you just, if you're listening, you'll hear, you'll hear what they've said. Ooh, so you could say something like, oh, it can feel really rough to feel like you're dumb, or like you're not as good as other people. But it helps to reflect back exactly what they've said. So to be listening and literally reflect back what they've said, because that shows that you're listening. They will get, oh, they've heard me. They know where I'm coming from. And people who are counselors, coaches and stuff, we have training to do this, and it's something we kind of do without thinking too much about, because it's just part of what we do. And people who are naturally quite empathic will do this. But if you're somebody who isn't, these are skills you can learn, so you don't have to be naturally good at doing that, or for it to come naturally. You can learn those skills. So that's kind of another layer that you can layer on top, is this kind of describing how they're feeling or reflecting back what they're saying, and so that's what you could do to replace, oh, I understand. Yeah, well, they'll just go, no, you don't. Whereas if you reflect back their own words, then they will say to themselves, they get me. They've heard. Yeah. They know where I'm coming from. Yeah. So it actually has the effect that you want to have when you say, I understand.
Absolutely. So, and I think that in itself, Sarah, is probably the most important gift we can give to anyone. And of course, that includes our children. Just this space to feel like somebody else has seen me fully. They've heard me, like they know what's on the inside. And for me, I think, because as a coach, I am definitely better at holding space for my parents as they come into my coaching space than I am for my kids. Like, I had to practice. I'm like, all right, for this next minute, you're gonna listen. Like, it didn't come easy for me because I didn't grow in that space.
Yeah. And I think this is such a good point, is that most of us don't grow up with those skills being reflected, right? Being mirrored. And I think our children are so lucky because they get that. They get what we didn't have, right? And it is that thing of when you're working with a client, you have that hour you're with them, or that half an hour when you're with them. And it's a contracted space, whereas, we're with our children all the time. There's this, there's the other. And so it's, and it kind of like an exercise in mindfulness to bring that kind of quality, that kind of attention to our everyday lives at the times when it's needed. Because I'm not saying you have to do this all the time. And this is so important. It's not like 24 hours a day. Nobody can do that 24 hours a day. But it is at those moments when they need it. And when those moments are, when they're struggling.
Yeah.
When they're starting to build up to you can feel, before they tip over the edge that they are going,
I think the difference as well for me, Sarah, was that my parents, as they come into my space from a coaching perspective, they don't tend to trigger me. Like, I'm solid in that space, right? Whereas my kids know where my buttons are, and they got speed dial.
Yes.
I have to be intentional that in this space, I'm going to listen. And it's not just that you can't do it 24/7. I'm going to put my hands up and say, after years of practicing, I still don't always get it when I have the intention to do it. And I have to go back and do corrective action. So I just wanted to make that really clear for parents. This is not a flip of a switch. Like, you say, okay, I'm going to do really good active listening, and I'm going to reflect what they feel, and somehow it's going to be magic. It's really a process of working and improving your skills in this area.
Absolutely. And, it takes time. And I know both of us are kind of similar in terms of the length of time we've been using these kind of techniques and these skills. You know, for me, it's 11 years, you know, when I've been, you know, over those 11 years been honing this. So, and it's not about being perfect. This is the thing. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. There is no such thing as a perfect parent. And it's not about that. It's not about being perfect. And actually, and what you just said about that corrective action. So I always say to my parents that in terms of using these kind of respectful parenting skills and, you know, being on it and being able to have your toolkit there, you know, your tool bag of skills, which is what I help parents to develop, a tool bag of skills so that you can bring those skills out, right, when you need them. And like you're going to be able to do that like a third of the time. Another third of the time, you're not going to be doing that at all. And you might even end up screaming like a wailing banshee at your children and then regretting it and all of that stuff, right? We've all been there. We've all been there where we're like, God, you just, right? And so that's a third of the time. Or not even screaming at them, but just, you know, life. Because it's very rare that I really shout at my kids, but that's, you know, I've got years of skills. So that's why. And yet I won't be being necessarily my best self, right? So I'm just being clear about that.
Yes.
And there's a spectrum of that. It'll look different for different people. For some people, that might be wailing like a screaming banshee. It might be, you know, completely losing it and crying and, you know, feeling despair and feeling like they're a rubbish parent. And it may even be spilling over, you know, some people might lash out at their child and regret it and things like that. That's something that's not talked about, and it happens, right? So there's a spectrum within that third as well. And then the other third, and this I just think is gorgeous, is it's a third where you get to repair, where you get to repair from the third when you're not able to do it, when you're not able to be your best self or bring that presence to the situation. And in that repairing third of the time, that there's so much magic. There's such a gift there for our children and for us, because that shows our humanity. It allows us to be human, to not have the pressure of having to be some kind of unrealistic image of a perfect parent, but also it allows our children to know it's okay. I can mess up. I can fail. I can struggle. I can be me. I can show up 100% as authentically me. I will still be loved. And, you know, I can clear it up if I make a mess. So that is massive. That is massive. So it's not learning about how to, you know, control ourselves all the time, because we can't always control ourselves, right? Yes. So there are times when it's hard to do that, but it's the repairing. That repairing third is huge. And I think it's that part that people feel shame around or feel is difficult because they want to be some kind of perfect parent, or they think that's what they're striving to be, but actually it's not about that.
And I think that what I love about that third is you said you get to show your humanness. And for me, that even comes back to having these types of discussions. So when you sit with your kid that's in that space of being negative for themselves, and you first come to the table knowing that my job is just to listen, to see inside of your world. And I have this thing that I call like the light, like the entry moment, where you get the cue from your kid, like, yes, you've got me. And sometimes, and that looks different. Sometimes people say, that's right. Like, yes, you finally got me. Sometimes for a little kid, when they're all hyped with emotions, you see them just kind of like the whole body just release. Like, yes, you finally got me. And I think that's where you have the entryway to not launch into a lecture, but to show your own humanity. And you can share a story about when you had trouble with your own negative self-talk. And that's a great space where kids are now open because you've done the listening and the reflecting first.
Another thing that I thought about with this, and I know we're coming to the end of our time, aren't we? So I'm going to share this really, really quickly, is another skill that I support parents to use is to build up your child's self-esteem, help to build that up with descriptive praise. So it's really hard to let praise in. So if he's feeling like he's stupid, he's a dummy, I think was the word used, you know, he's got that negative self-talk going on. When we can, you know, describe things, like praise them, but really specifically, that's what descriptive praise is where you're being really, really specific. Like say what you see that them doing, like physically doing, or so instead of saying, oh, that was really good or well done, when you are descriptive, then it goes in because, you know, just an example, you kept all of your writing right on the line. It's a fact. Like, they can't dispute that. Their writing is on the line, right? And then they praise themselves, like, oh, you know, my writing's neat. They might describe it as neat in their head or whatever. So it's like you describe what you see, and they internally will praise themselves, or sometimes externally. They might go, oh, yeah, I'm really good at writing, you know. Whereas if you said, oh, you're really great at writing, they immediately, whether they say it out loud, sometimes they'll say, no, I'm not. Or, you know, it drives us mad, just like, I'm trying to say something nice. And, you know, if you ever had that, you just say something nice and they're like, no, I'm not. So-and-so's better than me. You're just like, wow. Because they can't let it in. Whereas when we're really specific and descriptively praise them, they either externally out loud will praise themselves, or they'll say it in their head. Their self-talk, that will literally change their self-talk. So I think that is an amazing skill as well. So I just make sure I share that.
I love that, Sarah, because a lot of times, and I remember doing this as a child as well. So I can see both ends. Yeah. Well, you have to say that because you're my mom.
Exactly. You have to say that. You don't really mean it. So-and-so's better than me. Yeah. You didn't see when I just like, oh, you're really good at tidying up. You didn't see all the stuff I shoved under the bed. You know, comes up.
Yeah. Is there anything else we would like to add for Grace? So we're saying to Grace, start first by listening, really actively listening. Remember, less is more. Reflect what you've heard and build up their self-esteem by using descriptive words, not just in the moment, but in every opportunity that you can where it's appropriate. Is there anything else you'd like to add to Grace?
So the last thing I'll leave her with as well is, you know, with a child who is feeling that, you know, that sense of lower self-esteem, and they've got this internal dialogue that's been negative. So, you know, the descriptive praise will help to rewrite some of that, is to help them see themselves in another way. So give them opportunities to see themselves differently, to see themselves in another way. So, you know, if they think of themselves as irresponsible, maybe, you know, leave them to look after their younger sibling for half an hour or something, you know, or so it's giving them, finding opportunities to help them see themselves differently.
I love that, because I think it's really important to kind of close this conversation. Because yes, it's great to listen and to kind of dive deeper in, but we also want to gently kind of steer them to see themselves as beautiful and as magical as we see them.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is what we were sort of saying in the beginning, wasn't it? You know, so it kind of brings that full circle. So you've got some some great skills there to make a difference in this situation. And if you're wanting to find out more about how I can support you, then you can get in touch with me to find out more about the skills that I share to make a difference on a day-to-day level, but also long-term as well with your children.
And that is spcoaching.co.uk, where you can find Sarah.
That's right, spcoaching.co.uk. I've got a Facebook group as well, which is called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen UK as well, for anybody who wants to connect on Facebook. Yeah.
Beautiful. Right. Thank you so much for joining us and helping us answer Grace's question.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. We're all about sharing and supporting this village. So if you found value in this episode, be sure to share it with your family and friends. And remember, this is a weekly show. So if you haven't already, subscribe and hit that bell icon so that you'll be notified of our next episode. As we always say in the village, you're just one connection away. With love and gratitude, empower us. Until next time. You can't have the phone.